So we started the exploration before the pandemic hit and lockdown hit, and now we're exploring it with a little more vigor because of the pandemic situation. But what's really interesting about virtual reality, what's quite compelling about it, unlike any other educational technology before it, is that it's immersive. It brings you into a completely different world, and that's really powerful. So I'll just tell you by way of background, my first experience with virtual reality was in 2017 at a conference. My background is as a paramedic. I've been a paramedic for 36 years. I've been teaching paramedics for 20 years. And so I was at a paramedic educator conference in Washington, D.C., and there was a booth where a guy had a virtual reality headset on, and he was having an experience. And I could see what he was seeing on a big screen TV. And looking at the big screen TV, for me was completely unimpressive. It looked like any sort of patient simulation I'd seen before on a computer screen, not very exciting. But when I got to put the headset on, it was a wow moment for me, utterly. I was in the room with a patient, albeit an animated patient, who was sitting on the edge of his bed in his apartment, and he was struggling to breathe. And even though his character was animated, I could hear him struggling to breathe. And when I asked him questions, he could only speak 4 or 5 words between breaths. I could see his chest heaving as he labored to breathe. I could see a change in color in his lips from the lack of oxygen. I could take a stethoscope and listen to his chest and hear abnormal lung sounds. And I did a lot of time reflecting on that experience afterwards, and 2 things really struck me. One, that in VR, I got that same twinge of adrenaline I get as a paramedic when I see someone who's very sick or very injured, and I think I need to assess and treat that person quickly. And the second thing that really struck me from a learning standpoint was my first semester students, when we talk about cases, when I describe for them someone who's seriously ill or injured, they're looking at text, they're looking at maybe an image that I've provided, but they really have no context. And it struck me that virtual reality gives them context. They actually get to see what the sick and injured look like and get to assess and treat. And so when I started my explorations of VR, I started to think about all the programs that this could be applicable for. When you think about the trades is a beautiful place to experiment with virtual reality. If you could do HVAC training or construction training or welding training in virtual reality, ultimately, does that translate into a shortened learning curve so that they get better value when they do get the hands-on experience? Are they consuming less material as a result of their VR experience? So those are the areas we're exploring. And as you might imagine, colleges and universities enrollments are down, and we're in a pretty bad state of the economy. But I suspect that governments, if they're going to invest money anywhere, it's going to be in innovation, looking at innovative ways of learning. And the timing is just right for virtual and augmented reality to start exploring. So my hope is 2, 3, 4, 5 programs in the fall, and then maybe expand out from there. We'll have to see. It's certainly not going to replace, what we are currently doing. It's going to supplement it in a way that I think that's going to be really interesting and really compelling. And, my gut sense is that in 10, 15, 20 years from now, we'll probably see a lot more learning in virtual reality as headsets become smaller, cheaper, and content expands. And, I think companies are scrambling right now to try to address the needs of schools, both at K-12 and higher education. So it's exciting.